It was a freezing winter night when the doorbell rang. I answered the door to find a police officer standing there. I was confused because my daughter was asleep next to me. The officers had a little girl, about 5 years old, with him. She looked very cold and was shivering. I didn't know this girl and tried to explain, but the officers didn't believe me. He said he was taking her to the hospital. The girl's hair was messy, and her clothes were dirty and had holes. She looked about the same age as my daughter, but she was very thin. I wondered who this girl was and why she was on my balcony. My name is Janet. I'm 32 years old and work in an office. I live on the first floor of an apartment my parents bought for me. I live with my husband, who is also a company worker, and our 5-year-old daughter, Susie. My husband often travels for work and sometimes helps his colleagues even on his days off. One day, while my husband was away, my daughter and I were home alone when the doorbell rang. I checked the doorbell camera and saw it was a police officer's. I was surprised by this unexpected visitor. When I opened the door, the officer said he had found my child on the balcony and brought her back. I was shocked because my daughter was safe inside the house. How did this other girl get on the balcony without me knowing? The officers looked surprised, but I was the one really worried. I hadn't heard anything while I was asleep. The girl was freezing and looked so sad. I quickly grabbed a warm blanket from the room and wrapped her in it. Her hands were ice cold, and she was holding back tears, biting her lips quietly. Her messy hair and stained clothes showed she hadn't been cared for properly. The girl looked very thin and pale, almost as if she hadn't been fed properly. I wondered who she was and why she was on my balcony. My heart ached thinking about a child the same age as my daughter going through such pain. That night, I couldn't sleep much because I was worried about her. Then I got a call from my husband. He asked if anything unusual had happened while he was away on his business trip. I told him about the strange girl on our balcony and how the police took her to the hospital. He seemed surprised and asked, "Why didn't you take care of her yourself?" I was taken aback by his anger. "But she's a stranger. What could I do?" I replied. He said, "You're a mother too. You should have helped that little girl instead of letting the police take her. Isn't that sad?" I was confused by my husband's sudden anger. He knew the girl was young, but we hadn't even talked about it. When I pressed him for more information, he said, "Actually, she's the daughter of someone I know. Her mother is gone, and I felt sorry for her. So I brought her yesterday. I thought she would take care of her." I was shocked. "You weren't on a business trip. You need to explain this better." My husband apologized, but I couldn't believe he had left such a small child out on the balcony in the cold. Even if she had been dressed warmly, she could have easily frozen to death. I asked him where he was now. He said he was trying to find the girl's mother, but I felt like he was hiding something. Later, when he returned from his trip, he explained that he picked up the girl from the police and surprisingly left her with me. "Did you find her mother? What about her father?" I asked. He replied, "No, I haven't found them yet." I pressed further. "So who is this acquaintance you mentioned?" He simply said, "Just a casual acquaintance." My husband said he was going on another business trip soon. I asked him about the girl, but he ignored me and left her behind. I felt something was wrong with how he was acting, so I decided to search through his belongings. In the inner pocket of his suit, I found something shocking. I tried to call him, but I couldn't get through. Suddenly, I noticed my daughter Susie and the little girl looking up at me, both looking anxious. "What's your name?" I asked. The little girl, nervously, replied, "Ashley." She told me she was the same age as Susie, 5 years old. When I smiled gently at her, she looked surprised but then laughed, holding her rumbling stomach. "You must be hungry, right?" I asked. She nodded. I made Hawaiian plate lunches for both girls. They stared at the food with curiosity before digging in. They ate so quickly that their faces were covered in sauce. When I reached out to wipe Ashley's face with a tissue, she suddenly covered her head with her hand, as if trying to protect herself. This made me uneasy. "It's all right. I'm just going to wipe your mouth," I said gently. With a relieved expression, Ashley turned her face toward me. After I wiped off the sauce, she went back to eating. Once they finished their meals and looked very satisfied, I realized I needed to clean Ashley since she was dirty. As I started to undress her for a quick shower, I was shocked to see her body covered in countless bruises, as if she had been beaten or pinched. Trying to hide my worry, I cheerfully led her to the bathroom, determined to wash her body. Ashley said, "It's okay, I can't do it myself," and started washing her body with cold water. "Wait a minute, what are you doing?" I accidentally snapped. She looked at me with a puzzled face and said, "Ashley always does it like this." "Washing your body with cold water?" I asked. She nodded and tried to pour the cold water over herself again, but I quickly stopped her and used soap to wash her properly. Then I poured warm water over her, and she sighed happily, saying it was warm. I realized that at home, her mother had made her wash with cold water. The fact that she thought this was normal made my heart ache. After the shower, I dressed her in my daughter Susie's clothes and did her hair nicely. She looked completely different, like a sister to my daughter. Looking at my daughter and Ashley, their faces reminded me of each other, and I smiled warmly. Ashley was a sweet and gentle child who seemed to want love. She would come to me while I cooked, tugging at my skirt for attention. At bedtime, she would hold my hand and never let go. Susie also liked Ashley, and the two became very close, like real sisters. A week passed, and I still couldn't reach my husband. Ashley's mother said she knew my husband, but I couldn't keep taking care of a child based on that. I gave up trying to contact him. The police said Ashley had to go to a facility, and tears filled her big eyes as she looked back at me while the people took her away. My heart ached watching her go. Time went by without any news from my husband, and finally, I made a decision. 9 years later, I was living with my parents, my daughter Susie, and Ashley in our family home. I had adopted Ashley after she went to the facility. My parents treated her like their real grandchild, showering her with love since she came to us for a reason. The two girls grew up as sisters and became beautiful young women. Susie and Ashley's dream of becoming models came true, and recently, they were featured as junior models in magazines, stepping into a glamorous world and thriving with bright smiles on their faces. One day, the doorbell rang. When I opened it, my ex-husband, Philip, stood there looking poor and worn out. A stranger named Joanna was with him, not wanting to argue in front of the neighbors. I let them inside. Once we sat her day on the living room sofa, Philip suddenly spoke up. "Oh, actually, Ashley is my child." He said this without even apologizing for not contacting me in 9 years. I was so shocked that I let out a big sigh. "She looks just like you," I thought. "Is that woman over there your partner?" I asked. Philip nodded and began to tell me how he met Joanna. She had been working part-time at a bar that Philip often visited. Even though he was married with children, they became close, and Joanna got pregnant with Philip's child and gave birth to Ashley. However, Philip didn't have the courage to divorce me right away. Joanna got tired of taking care of the baby and decided to leave her role as a mother. In desperation, Philip thought about having me raise Ashley. It was a sad story, but what shocked me even more was what happened next. "Please give Ashley back to us." My ex-husband suddenly stood up from the sofa, looking almost in tears as he made this outrageous request, along with a deep apology. "What?" I happened to see a magazine on the table and was surprised. "She's grown up so well. Isn't she popular?" Philip shrugged, saying, "That doesn't matter to you. I'm Ashley's real father, and you're just a fake mother." "How dare you say that after not contacting me all this time?" I replied angrily. Then Philip, still on his knees, grabbed my leg with a sad look on his face. "We don't have any money and are in trouble. Ashley is our only hope. Please give her back." I was horrified. "Are you planning to make her work and live off her?" Philip shouted, "Stop making false accusations. I'm saving money for the kids on their banking cards. Ashley is my child too, and I will never hand her over." Suddenly, Joanna jumped up from the sofa and charged at me, giving me chills with her reckless attitude. "What are you doing to my mom?" Ashley suddenly yelled, spreading her arms wide to block my way and glaring at Joanna. "Remember me, I'm your mom. Let's go home together. You're not my mother. Get out of this house now, Ashley screamed, breaking down in tears as she clung to me. Even though Ashley was very young when she was taken away, it seemed she had some faint memories of the terrible treatment she had endured. Ashley, dear, that's just a misunderstanding. You were so young back then. Philip tried to excuse himself. I then pulled out a note and a photograph I had found in Philip's suit. The note read, I don't want to raise a child. I can't find Ashley cute. Get rid of her somewhere if you won't marry me. Let's run away together. The photo showed a young Ashley covered in bruises. I also had a hospital medical report. Do you still claim to be her parents after seeing this? You wanted to dump a child you didn't want to raise on me. You made this precious child suffer such horrors. Philip said, that was all my doing. I didn't know anything about it. I was too young to raise a child. It was inevitable. But anyway, I'll take Ashley back now. I replied firmly. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. I have legally adopted Ashley, so I am her parent. Oh, that has to be a lie, Joanna exclaimed. But Philip didn't seem ready to give up. If that's the case, I'll break up with Joanna, and we can't start over. Susie and Ashley are my children. We can't just go back to being husband and wife, and everything will be fine, right? What are you saying? I replied, feeling angry. You just want things to go your way. I'm not going to let that happen. I was shocked and frustrated listening to them. I didn't want to have anything to do with them, not even for a moment. I have more bad news for you, Philip. You and I are no longer married. What? Philip looked confused. 3 years after you went missing, I filed a lawsuit and got a divorce. What are you doing this for? He shouted, trying to grab me. But just then, I heard the sound of a police car approaching. My parents had called the police after seeing Joanna's aggressive behavior. Now that the police are here, don't come back to this house, I warned. Please forgive me. I'll give up on Ashley, but can you at least lend me some money? Philip begged, putting on a disgraceful act until the end. After that, the police took both Philip and Joanna away. I made sure Philip would pay his alimony and child support fully. Since they cut ties with all their friends and family, they would probably continue to struggle. But despite all the chaos, the little girl who once trembled in fear has grown up strong. I will live happily with my parents and my 2 loving daughters, looking forward to a bright future filled with dreams.